Hey everyone, I've just realized I've done something ridiculous here, so I'm updating the backdrop. So, welcome everyone. These are the three people we have this week. We have St. Mels, we have Valduc, and we have OSO. Now, Peter from Valduc has sent apologies. He's stuck in traffic. He'll be about 10 minutes late. But we have Patrick here from OSO in Spain, and we have Liam from St. Mels in Ireland. So the usual thing, we're just going to basically have a chat about the beers, about how they got into brewing, what they see as, where they see their beers going, and what the beer scene in each country is, and just have a nice relaxed chat, hopefully. So I don't know, maybe Liam, since you're over in the corner there, maybe we start with you. Just how did you get into brewing?
Well, I started brewing a long time ago. I'm 20 years working as a brewer now. So I started I went to Madrid University and I did a degree in biotechnology. And while I was there, I got an internship with a company called Dublin Brewing Company, which were in Dublin city centre at the time. And it was the internship there that turned me on to craft brewing. I wanted to get involved in brewing, but I didn't really know much about craft brewing at that time. This is back in 1999, 2000. So they turned me on to the whole idea of craft brewing. I worked there for a while. Then I did a master's in Heriot-Watt in Edinburgh in brewing and distilling science. And then I worked with a UK brewer for a little while, learning about cask ales and how to do all that. Then I came back to Ireland to work for a company called Carlow Brewing Company. So I was there for about 10 years, their head brewer. And then I got married and my wife got pregnant with twins. So we wanted to move back up to the Midlands. And it was always my ambition to open a brewery in my hometown of Longford anyway. So that's when St. Mels was founded. So St. Mels was founded in 2014. We started brewing in 2014. And we've been here ever since. So that's a brief synopsis of the journey.
It's a long journey.
Yeah.
So so St. Mels, I mean, you're looking at it. If I understand right, I mean, you're like you mentioned there, it's very local. It's very much a local focus, and I think you get a lot of your ingredients are trying to be local, and it really the place you're from. Would that be sum it up?
Yeah, we try to root ourselves in the community. So like we chose the name St. Mel because it's synonymous with the area. There's a cathedral named after St. Mel. The school I went to was St. Mel's College. There's all kinds of stuff named after him. He was a saint, or apparently he was a saint. There was a nephew of St. Patrick, and he founded a church in my business partner Owen Tynan, his home village, Arda. That is where the original St. Mel was, and the ruins of it are still there. So it all kind of tied in nicely. The other thing that happened was the year we opened up, St. Mel's Cathedral in Longford Town burned down in 2008 fire, and they refurbished it over 6 or 7 years, and it opened the month we started brewing. So it was all a very happy coincidence.
That's a good omen, I think.
Well, we hope so. We hope so. Anyway.
So maybe look, just might as well open the beer because I'm a bit thirsty. Like I'm looking at the beers you sent on. How would you summarize your beers? I mean, what are you trying to go for with beers?
St. Mels beers. Well, when we started the brewery, craft beer had just really taken off in the country, but there was very little of it around the Midlands. So the beers we started producing are designed to be very accessible and kind of crossover beers. They're not meant to be the wild, wacky, super challenging beers that a lot of brewers are nowadays. So we started with a Helles Lager, a Pale Ale, and a Brown Ale. And we did that because we wanted people to move over from their Smithwick's or their Heineken or whatever run-of-the-mill beer they were drinking without scaring them off craft beer. So they were never too strong, and they were never overly ambitious or groundbreaking. They were the original core beers that we did. We added a seasonal range then where we got a little bit more experimental. We did things like raisin and oatmeal stouts and elderflower wheat beers. And the way they were received gave us confidence to be a little bit more experimental as we went along. And nowadays we release 6-7 new beers a year, and we tend to experiment a little bit with ingredients and stuff and styles there. We've recently kind of got into Belgian styles actually, so we're doing a lot of Belgian inspired stuff these days.
Okay, and is that just purely because that's your interest, or do you think there's a market driven?
It's not market driven at all. I'd say our core beers, we do a canned range and a bottled range, and I'd say those core beers are quite market driven. But no, the limited editions we do are all about what we're interested in and what we want.
And
what we've had.
Of the ones you have there, which would you think, like you sent on, there's a slow burner stout. You sent your spice bag save on, which got quite a reputation, and your Sure Look It, which was in a can. Which would you think? Like, what would you recommend if someone wanted to know what St. Mels are trying to do? Which one of those do you think we should open?
I'd say the slow burner stout is a good example of what we do. It's just a really well made stout, full of flavour. That's right. So it's a classic of the style, and that's what we try to do. When we brew a style of beer, we try to make it full of flavour and to be on point with the style.
Right. Did you try that, Patrick?
I'm going to open it now. I'm going in. I wasn't sure. I saw about 30 beers arrive in my house, and I thought, this is going to be a big tasting. I didn't know.
No, we won't. I have to drive somewhere later, so I can't be too bad.
But I'm going to crack it open now.
And how about yourself? Well, actually, just give us what your opinion of it there is, because you sent on a couple of stouts as well.
Yeah, we sent our coconut stout.
Yeah, and I actually found just a while ago you have an imperial pastry as well, but maybe we'll just focus on this one first. So talk about so when you started, this isn't the stout you started with. This is a special, is it?
It's part of our core range now. So we did a series of dark beers a few years ago. We did a black IPA, we did a Schwartz beer, we did a slow burner, we did a couple other ones. I can't remember what they were now, but we asked people which one they'd want to see come back as part of our core range, and 80% of them said the slow burner. So that's what we came back with.
Yeah, well, I mean, stouts is obviously Ireland. Stouts are the bigger part than probably most other countries. Like
stout on draft is huge, but dark beers in general and off licenses aren't as big.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't. They sell this time of year. Stouts are great this time of year. Everybody wants to have one, but spring, summer, they're not the biggest seller, and you have to be a little bit careful about how many different stouts you have out at once, because they can end up getting stuck on off-license shelves if you have too many of them in your range.
Right.
But in pubs on draft, stouts a huge seller.
Yeah. No, like I'm thinking, obviously Guinness, obviously has influenced drinking in Ireland, How about your?
Yeah, and look, we're known all over the world for our stouts. Probably, I'd suggest when we got the reputation for our stouts, we probably didn't deserve it. But now there's loads of fantastic stouts out there. So there's like my old brewery, O'Hara's, Porterhouse, just so many that you can name. They're doing not just fantastic draft stouts, but fantastic bottle and can stouts as well. There's just an amazing amount of them now.
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I've seen like nitro stouts are suddenly coming into. I don't know whether it's a fad or I see a lot of nitro stouts suddenly popping up everywhere.
I think stout is a style of beer. It's one of the few styles of beer that nitro really suits. Where a stout is very much about mouthfeel, and nitro beer accentuates the mouthfeel. Doesn't do much for the aroma. Can deaden the aroma quite a bit, but in terms of mouthfeel and getting those malty flavors into your mouth, the nitro really helps that. So I think that's why nitro suits stout, and works sometimes with a red ale as well.
Right. How about you, Patrick? What did you think of that one? Did you try it? Well, you did.
Yeah, I just tried it. It's lovely. It's very, very, very smooth. Like you said, mouthfeel is fantastic. Nice and roasty. It's the kind of beer I miss out here because it's the only stouts that are really imperial stouts, and normally with adjuncts. So getting like a just sort of a more classic, anywhere between 5.5% to 7% stout is a lot harder to find here. So it's great when you can.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm always doubtful about adjuncts in it, because I don't know if you agree, but I was told that they're very hard to get right, because you can think you've got it right just up to the last second, and then you just have one drop too much and it kind of destroys the whole thing.
Yeah, and you can't take anything out. I mean, obviously. So yeah. It's that's a bit of a tricky one, but yeah, that's lovely. I mean, I used to work before OSO for a brewery in London, and we used to brew loads of dark beers, and I do miss that side of things, but we just find beers, so we are unable to do a lot of them, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe give us how did you end up? You're obviously not Spanish. How did you end up in Spain?
So I'm English. I studied here on my year abroad when I was at university, which is where I met my now business partner. And we kind of always had the plan to come back. I was working in brewing I've been working in brewing now for 7 or 8 years, and started coming back over to Spain for sort of beer festivals and events, and then just saw that things were sort of starting to move on here, starting to pick up, and thought, we want to do something. We kind of the plan would be to move back to Madrid. Nice lifestyle here, really, and we just thought maybe we'll give it a go. We'd seen, and so we thought we'd just give it a go. So that was about 3.5 years ago. We set up about 3 years ago with our own bar as well, in the middle of town. And it's an interesting beer market here. It's very, very dominated by a few very big players, obviously San Miguel, Mau, Estrella Damm, Estrella Galicia. But there is a big group of people here who are really getting excited about having choice and having more options, and we try and cater to that, obviously.
Isn't that kind of the case in every European country? It's certainly most European countries, that the market is dominated by 2 or 3 big guys.
Yeah, I think it is. I think the one thing we get here in Spain is that someone like Mau, which is San Miguel, same guys, and it'll be sort of, so people don't really see them as being like a massive industrial, multinational beer company, but they'll just be so popular here in Madrid, because people like even sort of AB InBev aren't that strong in Spain. Okay. So you're kind of competing against these guys that have just like really haven't had any competition other than maybe Heineken for 40 years. And though they think about what it was like in the UK, where you'd have lots of Thai pubs and a real stranglehold on the market for the big guys. Here, every bar you go into will only have one beer. It changed people's minds a lot in that respect. But at least in the UK, okay, there'd all be brands owned by InBev, but you would think that you had choice. You think, well, I could have Budweiser, or I could have Kronenbourg, or I could have Stella, or whatever. Whereas here, it's just you go into a bar and you just say, "Can I have a beer?" and they'll give you that beer, and it's you choose the size, and that's it. So we have 8 taps in our place, and people will still come in and go, I'll have a double, which is sort of 2/3 of a pint. And they're just and a lot of people don't want to choose. They just go, that's what I have, and they'll be very, very shocked if you have something that isn't the local Mau, basically.
So do you in your bar have a kind of go-to beer, the uneducated, where when they come in and just go, I want a beer? Do you have lager there that you lash out to them?
Yeah, we always have a lager. We're street right in the centre of town, so we'll always have a lager on that we can. We try and have a slightly more interesting offering, whether it will be a lager made by a smaller Spanish brewery, or we get international stuff in as well. Have nice German lagers on, or Czech pilsners and stuff like that. But that's good for us as well, because if they start having something different with something that isn't a huge leap, then they start to we have a chance to sort of chat to them about what we do, give them a little taster of a pale ale or a table beer or something that might be not too far out, and then we've got a chance to sort of show them what the IPA is.
5 hours later, they're throwing back a coconut marshmallow stout and telling you you've used the wrong hops in your IPA.
Why do I go back to anything else?
But is that like in your bar? Is it mainly? Do you have locals? Is it or like regulars, locals? Are they tourists? What's coming in?
We get a real mix. Like obviously, the last couple of years, a lot fewer tourists. But we, like I said, we Saturdays and Sundays on our street is kind of, our street is maybe 500 yards long, and there's about 70 bars. So there's loads of tiny bars. It's very traditional kind of Spanish. Lots of people standing up or at high stools. Quite compact, but the way they drink here, they like to be rammed in. They don't like to sort of have too much space. It's been obviously a big challenge during the pandemic, but the thing is, you pop in, you come in, you go for a beer there, and then you.
We have a
Sticky internet.
Yeah, it comes and goes there a bit.
Dropped off.
Yeah, there we come back in a second. So I mean, you obviously it's just you, So we. So you don't have a tap room, do you?
No, we so in Ireland it's not legal, or it's not a right for a brewer, because they have a brewing license to have a tap room, which is the case in the UK. But after a lot of lobbying, we got the government to introduce 2 new types of license in what was called the Craft Beer Bill in 2018, I think. So that allows you to have a producer's retail license or a producer's on license. And when COVID hit, we decided to get one of these licenses, and we looked at the tap room, but you're very limited in your opening hours, and you have to run it to the same standards as a pub. And by that I mean you have to have the same fire safety efforts as a pub, and you have to have the same levels of standards as a pub, which is fine and fair enough. But you can only open between 10 and 7, so you don't get the nighttime trade out of it. So we chose to go for the producer's retail license, which means that people can pop into the brewery and buy a bottle of beer or 2 bottles of beer or a case of beer or whatever they want, which was illegal up until this bill was introduced. So somebody couldn't come to a brewery in Ireland until 2 years ago and buy a bottle of beer. They could buy like 4 cases of beer, but they couldn't buy a bottle. Yeah, it was. It was there from Victorian times. It was to protect pubs back in the day.
Yeah.
And once that law got changed, we got on that and got a producer's retail license, which allowed a couple of things. It allows people to call into us, but it also allows us to sell online and ship direct to people's homes. So we call it direct to consumer, but our direct to consumer trade is really what sustained us during the various lockdowns, because we were one of the few breweries with the appropriate license to send beer direct from the brewery to people's houses. And now other people got around it other ways to partner with pubs and stuff, but that was how we did it.
Right.
But no, we've no tap room, and we don't have any immediate plans because of that license law where you have to be closed at 7:00.
Right. And before the pandemic, like, was most of your sales through pubs? Was it draft, or was it?
We were about 70% hospitality before the pandemic. It was a huge area of focus. And I've said it before, but in 2019, the start of 2019, we put together a business plan that was very much about selling into hospitality. That was our entire strategy for the next 3 years. So after about 3 months, that got thrown out the window. Sorry, not 2019, 2020. So we had to throw that out the door. And that's why we went to just retail license. We had to completely rebalance and refocus on what we were doing. We had never put beer in cans before that.
Okay.
We started putting beers into cans because we thought that people, when they were shopping online for cans, turns out they prefer bottles.
Really?
For cans, yeah.
Because that's something I've been finding interesting. Like I would have thought, bottles, like they do have a heft and they do kind of give it a sense thing. But I was always surprised that cans seem to be customer driven. Like lately,
and the off licenses we deal with all want cans, or 80% of them. But for us online, bottles are a bigger seller. Whether that's just because of the beers we have in bottles compared to the beers we have in cans, I don't know. But bottles are a bigger seller for us online,
right.
which surprised us.
Like I said, I was surprised.
It was a bit annoying while we figured out how to get bottles safely through the courier network as well.
Yeah, no,
and expensive.
Yeah, well, that's the other problem with bottles. Like, shipping cost on them is you're paying so much for just the weight of the bottle. Like,
yeah, well, it costs the same with us if you buy the big cans or big bottles and shipping at the same cost, but they are. There's obviously still a quality perception to them out there that's latent, and we find it with hospitality as well. A lot of our hospitality customers don't want to know about cans; they don't want to put them in
I can understand that in hospitality. I mean, if I was in a restaurant and you want a beer, I would feel a bit odd, even though I know it's going to taste the same. If they brought me a can, you're out for a night. It should be, the bottle feels special. But yeah, because I've just been surprised that when people put stuff on cans that were on bottles, you see people on Facebook and Twitter and stuff going, "Yay, it's on cans!" I'm just amazed at the consumer demand for it.
Yeah, look, a lot of people talk up the environmental and sustainable aspect of cans, but I've actually read a few papers that the bottles are probably more sustainable, unless the can is made of 100% recycled aluminium, which I don't believe is the case with any cans. It turns out that the bottle is actually more sustainable when you add all the stuff up together.
Right.
Only marginally so. There's not that big a difference between the two.
And it probably depends on what kind of ability you have to recycle it. Where.
Yeah, and then we have a system here where bottles aren't returnable. Speaking as a brewer, I'm pretty happy about that because the headache of dealing with a lot of bottles comes back to be significant. We put it into a bottle bank. We have a glass factory on the island, and all the bottles go to them, and they turn it into bottles again, and we get bottles from them. So,
right,
it's a fairly sustainable loop from our point of view. So I know that's not the case everywhere, but in Ireland, for a brewer who's buying bottles from a factory on the island, and those bottles are consumed on the island and put back into their factory for recycling, that sounds pretty sustainable to me.
Yeah. How about you, Patrick? You were saying there before you got cut off that
I've moved room. I'm now sitting on top of the router, so hopefully.
Right. I think it seems a better connection, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
We do everything in can. We struggle to sell cans to like non-craft focused on trade for sure. Like if we want to get into a nice restaurant, most restaurants here they want a bottle. There's already, again, it's a legacy thing as well, massively here, that you would drink cans at home maybe, but if you in bars you can drink from the tap or bottles. There's just you would never go to any kind of bar here where they would serve you a can of beer in the bar, and I think that's just something that people haven't really moved on from. In the places that are more beer specific, it's kind of accepted, but it's also a headache. If you the packaging lines for either are not cheap, so you do sometimes have to kind of make a bit of a play for one or the other, because getting a good quality bottling or canning line is very expensive. So It is tricky to service both, and we think at the moment we've got less of a market in bottles, or less ability to compete with the people currently doing bottles in this country, where as opposed to being able to sell a lot of off trade and online. But like I said, we've never done bottles. Where I was working before in London, which was Anspash and Hob Day, we did bottles, and we did lots of quite traditional styles in bottles. And even then, when we put them into cans, it just took off. It just went mad. But I think there's possibly, believe that it might be coming back around the other way. I definitely think you can see that. And I think when you want to reach a wider market, which at some point, obviously, we would like to do, because I'd say we're quite niche at the moment, then I think bottles is definitely something we'll have to look at.
You guys can line, Patrick.
But we Nomad brew, so we don't have our own space. So we brew in 3 different places, and all of them have canning lines and no bottling lines. Well, 2 of them have bottling lines, but they've basically stopped using them. So everything we do goes into can and keg.
We're quite lucky in this country in that we have a company called BevCraft, Irish Craft Canning, and they're just a half an hour up the road from us, but they have mobile canning units.
Yeah.
And they come to your brewery and package them for you. And they're really successful, and they've got a load of small brewers into cans who wouldn't have been able to get their beer into cans. Huge help to the industry here.
Yeah, mobile. I mean, I remember when that some people started doing that in the UK. And
they actually operate in the UK as well.
5-6 years ago, and I think at the start it was a little bit, they were sort of starting off with not that high level machines, and they were bringing them around in the back of a van, basically. So I think there was a few things that were causing a few issues, but they've definitely ironed that out, and now it's as good as having your own canning line, I think, really. So it's great. But I think that helps. But I think, like I said, for getting into wider into more restaurants, into more bars, into more a wider range of places, bottles is still essential here in Spain anyway, for sure.
Right. So that's really. And are you with your own bar? Is that where you're selling now? Is it mainly, or assuming there's no pandemic and stuff, like, are you selling most of your stuff through your own bar, or are you selling it through packaging or into restaurants? Or
we sell about 20% of our beer through the bar.
It's lower than I would have thought.
Yeah, well, we package normally about 17 hectolitres, and we'll do about 20% of that in the bar. Then we'll do about 50% of it distributed in Spain, and then we'll export the rest. And now through the pandemic, obviously the web shop picked up a lot, so that obviously takes on a fair chunk of it now as well. But our bar is, you can fit about, you can legally fit about 25 people in there. You can fit about 40 people in there without it being crazy. But because of the way they did the COVID restrictions here, we were down to 50.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So we were allowed sort of 12 people in the bar for most of this year. So obviously we really dropped. But even with 25 people, we'll be doing about 20% of that batch in keg through our bar. We're starting to see people coming to the bar and taking away cans of our beer. That's going up quite a lot now, which is really nice. Obviously, as much as you can sell direct is always good, as you know.
I see a comment here from Taris and OSO Brewery. He was trying to meet up with you. He said I think he visited you. He said it was that it was a nice bar.
Oh, right. Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
That's the wrong one that came up there. But he found a lot. He was saying that there seems to be a lot of basically a pretty good scene around scene around Madrid overall. But he made a comment on that he wanted to try and meet up with you when you were there, but must have called it a bar and had a drink anyway. Yeah, no,
Madrid is good now. I'd still say Barcelona is a bit more they get more tourism there, which obviously helps with this kind of beer, and probably a more international feel to the city, whereas Madrid is still quite traditional, to be honest. But yeah, because most of the bars are, they have one beer, they have a Rioja and a Ribera del Duero red wine. It's just like, you can pretty much get the same thing in lots of different places. I think that has given a lot of opportunity to people who want to do something different, to still kind of get people to take a bit more notice. I think if you open a craft beer bar now in London, people are going to be like, oh, great, another one, like not, it's not, people will say, what are you doing differently? It's got to be something that's got a real, like, unique selling point. Whereas I think here, it's starting to get to the point where most neighborhoods will have something like what we do. And yeah, we're, it's people are catching on. It's growing pretty quickly. So, hopefully the future looks good for the market here in Spain.
Right. Yeah, just to bring it back around, I suppose, because you were saying, like, well, Ian was saying there about, he started off with what I think was pretty much the standard of, in Ireland when craft brewing was starting, was you had to have your lager, your stout, your red ale, and that was, they were the ones, or else the bars wouldn't take much notice of you. But it sounds like that's still, like I said, you need something to get the people off, the big multiples. So you need your lagers in there as well. But I noticed that you seem to do a lot of, kind of double and triple IPAs. So that there seemed to be a mismatch there for me.
No, yeah. So it's two different things. So for the bar, we'll always have a lager on, but it won't necessarily be one that we make. But we, beer is cheap in Spain. Like, taxes are, it's about 5 cents a pint of tax here. So beer is very cheap here. So we look at it and we think, well, we can try and make a very good lager, brewed the right way and all sorts. But we wouldn't be able to come in at our size and the way we brew anywhere near competitive. So we look at where we can be competitive, and we make a lot of very hop forward double IPAs, do a few triple IPAs, and a lot of sort of hazy or New England styles. Those are the styles that are within the smaller segment of the market that is people who like craft beer. Those are the styles that sell best. It's more for us what we're going to be looking at in terms of the next stage. So if we want to grow and we want to start packaging, big amounts and brewing a lot more, and establish, a few, a bit more of a core range, which is going to be something that we really try and roll out nationally, then we're going to have to start looking at having some lager and working on, things like, kind of like a session IPA that people can kind of get their head around and that they can enjoy, but it's going to be, more appealing to more people, I guess. But you're not sort of constrained here by any, there's not really such thing as traditional styles, because there's not as much of a beer tradition here. It's, people drink lager. They might not even know that Mal is a lager, they're just like, it's Mal, that's what I drink, or it's Estrella, that's what I drink. So it's kind of, you're not really constrained by there being traditional styles, because there's really, it's kind of monocultural in terms of beer. There's just one,
right?
That makes up a huge amount of the market. So we've been able to find our sort of part of the market by doing, very hoppy styles. There's quite people quite like sweet things here. So those sort of lower bitterness, much more sort of tropical fruit, floral styles. Definitely go down very well with it. Right.
Yeah, well, I know Liam opened the and I had it the other night, was Nature one, which I thought was really nice. I drank it on Wednesday night because I was looking for something on that I didn't want to have, like 10% or something like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, Nature. I mean, so that's where we kind of, this is part of our testing the one product that we really want to get behind, and I think it will be a sort of 4.5% pale ale or session IPA that we can get into small pack at a really competitive price when we're brewing a lot of it. And I think, we obviously look at, Spain we see as sort of a beer market that is probably behind. Obviously you'd say maybe the US was the most advanced in terms of time. Then you're looking at the UK and Ireland and Scandinavian countries maybe as being the ones who are probably then the next step ahead. And then we would see ourselves as in terms of timeline being a bit further behind. So we obviously look at the success of someone like Beavertown before they became Heineken, but the success that they had with a product like Necco, which really just took them to that next level in terms of popularity. And so we look at and think that makes sense, because that was a really nice beer that you could, you could have more than one, and like some of the double IPAs we do, you have 2 cans and you're kind of struggling. So we definitely look at that, as well as those being the kind of beers that we like to drink, because the sort of British and Irish pub culture means that you drink pints. You don't just drink a thimbleful. You want to go out and be able to stay in the pub for a decent period again without being completely legless after 3 beers. So sessionable beers are the kind of stuff that we like and that we drink, and we think that for us to help us grow and for the market to grow, that's kind of where we need to position ourselves in the long haul. But doing the odd
nature is a lovely beer.
Yeah.
And Mosaic is a really funny hop. It was really well, really badly. It's done really well there. But in Ireland, every second beer that comes out is this exact style at the moment.
Yeah.
Where it's like a reasonably sessionable, very hoppy beer, and it's a style that's starting to get a little bit. It's starting to get a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? They're all starting to taste the same.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's so many of them out there, there's very little room to stand out in that area at the moment.
Yeah,
we do those styles of beers, but it's very hard to perceive the difference between them all really nowadays.
Yeah, I mean I completely agree. I think that's why we're kind of keen, because it's still very much we'll have our pub, we'll have 3 beers on at the same price, and people will probably lean towards getting the one that's the strongest alcohol, because they'll kind of be like, that's the best value. And so there's a lot of people who still really focus on that here in Spain. It is big strong double IPAs, and we kind of want to get ahead on the more sessionable styles to kind of establish ourselves as sort of people who do that very well, and when not lots of other people are trying to do that. And then we can maybe really settle on having one beer, like I said, like an Echo, when sort of first that it becomes established as a brand. It's not just about the brand of OSO as the brewery. We have this beer that you really can roll out and get into sort of all the shops, and the shops that take it, you can do a lot of it, offer it at a good price, and you can they can be taken home crates instead of cans. Is where we want to go, because those are the kind of beers that we love. And then you do your one-offs, where you can have a bit more fun, and do your smaller batches of those, just to keep us happy.
Yeah, that's something I was wondering about, like on branding. I suppose we're kind of coming around to it on branding. Like I said, I mean, in the past, that the big ones, the brand was the single beer. You had the brewery was Guinness, the brewery was Heineken, the brewery was Carlsberg, and they had one beer which kind of made them. And where do you see that going now? Like, brewers now seem to need to brew multiple different beers, keep coming up with something new all the time. So do you try and focus on building a brand around a beer? Does a brewery just have to be kind of focused on a particular style of beer? How do you see the branding on that going?
I think the brewery is the brand now. Certainly in independent breweries, the brewery is the brand. When you get into the bigger stuff, it's a completely different story. But for us, the brewery is the brand, and the beer names need to reflect the brand, or you need to reflect your brewery's brand in the beers that you make, and the beer, how you name the beers and all that sort of stuff. So.
And does that limit you though? Do you think then that you have to try and limit down to doing like mainly one style of beer?
Oh God, no, you can do any beer you want as long as you keep your brand values in mind when you're naming it, and when you're addressing the label and all that sort of stuff. My opinion on it, anyway.
Yeah, first I just want to say I'm having the saison now, and it's fantastic. The spice bag, that is great. You know, starting to hear some Christmas music around, and this is.
Do you know what a spice bag is?
I don't think so. No.
Spice bag is something you get from the takeaway over here. It's like chicken and chips all mashed up with some vegetables, and there's a kind of a spice thrown over.
Right.
So we got a guy called Aaron Capil, who runs a company here. He's an English guy, but he runs a company here called Green Saffron Spices, and he imports spice direct from India. Really fresh stuff, really high end, and he's well known in the restaurant trade over here. We got him to create a spice bag mix for us, and that's what's in that beer.
It's great. I love it. It's again, saison is a style that you just don't see it enough over here, and I really miss it. And it's great. But yeah, anyway, onto the point. I just thought I'd say it because I was enjoying it.
Because I had that one last night, and I was trying to figure out the spices in it, but I finished it before I figured it out. It was easily.
But yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Like, I do think you're right that the brewery is the brand. You know, people will. If I go into a pub and I see a brewery that I've had mainly good beers from, I don't care what beer it is. I'll think these guys are probably making, these people are probably making good beer. So I'll have one of those. If it's a style I like, obviously, if it's a style I'm not that keen on, I won't. So I definitely think that's true. And I think in terms of styles, there is probably an element of you'll get to some extent pigeonholed whether you like it or not. I mean, you're not in full. You can never be fully in control of your brand. If you start to make a lot of a certain style, then people will start to associate you with those styles. I think that can definitely help you. I think it's quite good to have a position in the market. We've got here in Spain, we've got these guys called Soma Brewery, and they just brew really hoppy, mainly double IPAs, triple IPAs. Maybe they'll do 1 in 50 beers, they'll do something else. And the people that like that know that. And so, if you have the percentage of the market, people who love very hoppy beers, they are very loyal to that brand. And so, so I think that's another element. But I do also think that if you want to go very big, which is not necessarily we want to go, but if you want to start doing if you want to get as big as someone like Camden or Beavertown, obviously these are both guys that got very big with the help of bigger businesses. But I think that when you want to go that big, you probably do have to back one product, because we're all people we're insiders, aren't we? Really, so we know a bit more of the nuance of each brewery, and we'll go, I tried a bit of this from them, tried a bit of this from them. Whereas, we're not insiders in something like wine, and there'll be people who, I'm sure someone like Oyster Bay, they probably make various wines, but their Sauvignon Blanc is the one that is everywhere and is really taken off. And I think that you probably do, if you really want to go to a mass market, you probably do want to get behind one beer, in my opinion. I don't think there's that much space. If you're an insider, you've got a lot of space in your mind for different breweries and brands and products. But if you're not an insider, if you're just a casual consumer, you've only got so much space in your mind for these different brands, in my mind. And if you want to get to that market of people who aren't they like craft beer for what it is, but they're not enthusiastic. They're not craft beer enthusiasts. Then yeah, you probably do want to have just one thing that's very simple for them to understand. This is the product, and you should go back and buy this again.
Yeah, I suppose that brings it back into like Untapped, where I've had people come on and say like, they basically Untapped. All it means is that they have to churn out a new beer because you can't get someone to try this beer twice. You have to completely come up with a new beer every time because they just want to check it in and that's it. They don't really care about.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I hope that's going to change. I think over the long, Untapped is a bit of a phenomenon. It is something that is important. We've seen it with, we brew styles that are that will generally get a better rating on Untapped. If you do big hoppy double IPAs, we'll be very honest about it. Like we've sometimes brewed sort of New England style, didn't get it 100% right, and then we'll go, this is not our best one, and then it'll get like a 3.9, and you're like, oh right, okay. Whereas if we'd have messed up, or not messed up, not done a sort of the best example of a sort of brown ale, then you could just be getting, 3s and below and stuff like that. So that definitely does happen on Untapped. I don't know why it happens. I don't know why it's got to there, but it does. And then, but it also, we've seen it, if we want to try and start with a new distributor, or we want to start with a new importer in, wherever in the country where we've got no base and we've got no real ability to sort of go there and enter the market. That is the first thing that they'll look at, I think. And so if you can have a good rating on there, it definitely
But does it limit you do you feel an urge then that you have to be producing a new style of beer all the time just because people won't, they'll just move on to the next thing just so that they can tick it off a box?
I think that has, and this is actually not just with our beers, but firsthand in the bar, I think that has died a bit. I think that people are now actually, I can see more and more people using it going, oh, have I had this beer? Because they've had, I don't know, I don't really use it, so I don't keep track of how many beers I've had, which is probably for the best. But it's, these people are like, I've had 10,000 beers, which obviously you can't remember all of them. And then they'll come back and they'll go, oh yeah, I had this and I'd liked it, so I'll have it again. I think it's people, like craft beer is expensive normally, right? It's normally more expensive than the competition. And so, I think people are starting to get a bit tired of the risk of spending €7 on a pint, which in Spain is a lot. I don't know what the pricing is like currently in Ireland, but paying over the odds for a pint of what they can get for other stuff and being disappointed. I think people are coming back to wanting a bit of certainty in and saying, well, I'm gonna pay €7, but I really want to know that I'm going to like it, because we've all been there. There's nothing worse when you've just you bought a can of beer or whatever and you spent a decent amount of money,
yeah,
and it's not very nice, and that does happen. But I think people want to limit that a bit. And we see that with our beers. We'll tap a beer for maybe 2 months before it goes. When we do a new release, and we see that those are, we've got a lot more people going back to those instead of where previously maybe they would have come in and gone, oh, you've got this in the fridge, I've got to try it. That real hype element, I think, is starting to change.
Do you see that, Liam? Do you think that that's happened as well, that you're seeing more people coming back, or have you always had the people just coming back for the same beers?
I'm a bit unusual amongst brewers in that I pay absolutely no attention to Untapped whatsoever. I couldn't care less about.
Right.
I used to care about it for about 2 or 3 years, and I sat down one day and figured out what percentage of my customers had tapped in on Untapped. and it was less than 0.001%. So it was less than 1/100 of 1% actually use Untapped. So my customers don't use it. My ratings aren't great on Untapped because I pay no attention. I've never brewed a beer with Untapped on mind, and nobody I know uses it amongst. So
Yeah.
now I do accept that it is very useful when you're looking to export markets, but nobody we've spoken to about exports has ever mentioned our Untapped rating or ever asked us about our Untapped rating or ever discussed it even. And the longer you're on Untapped, the closer you'll veer to 3.5 or 3.45. So ultimately, that's where you'll end up. And I always think, as a business, if you live by your ratings, you're going to die by your ratings as well. So I just don't care about it.
Yeah.
Having said all that, I do see ratings getting bigger, and there are more and more young people are into it. So people of my generation or my age, you mention Untapped to them and they look at you blankly, but if you mention it to somebody in their 20s, they get all excited about this new rating beer thing. So maybe I need to start thinking about it a little bit more. But it's not something I think about at all when I'm working. I look at it sometimes, and when there's good ratings, I'm delighted, and when there's bad ratings, I don't like it. That's my relationship with Untapped.
Yeah. I think I'll just caveat what I was saying. I mean, I think that when you start out, no one knows who you are when you start out. So you don't have a brand, and so I think that when you start out, which we've only really, obviously with everything with the pandemic, it was only really just over a year that we really started to up our production and start brewing a lot more. So I would say that when you're starting, it can be something that can give you a big leg up and can kind of get you moving a bit quicker because.
Oh, it totally can, and there's breweries. There's brewers I know who, their entire reputation is built around their Untapped score. But that's great while the Untapped score is good. But
yeah, but you need to, so you have that, and then I think that you need, like you said, you can't live on it forever. You've got to build that brand with having loyal customers that like you regardless of what your Untapped rating is. So I think for a new brewer, it can be worthwhile, considering it because it can open some doors for you in terms of your distribution. But it's not a long term. I mean, look at them. If you just looking at it in terms of monetary terms, there's not a good correlation between breweries that sell the most beer and their Untapped ratings. The biggest brands, they don't care. Of course, they don't care because they're able to market. They've built a brand in sort of, I guess, the traditional sense, and not just based on, oh yeah, this is a good rating. So I completely agree that it's not. I'm not like a evangelist for Untapped by any means. I personally don't use it, but I think it is. Like I said, I think at the very beginning, it is. It helps to have good ratings on there. But like I said, we wouldn't brew something that didn't sell just because it got us a good Untapped rating as well. We brew stuff because we think it's good and because we obviously have to sell it, because it's the business. So we wouldn't kind of adjust the strategy massively. But yeah, over time.
There is the thought as well that if you want to go Untapped rating, just do double IPAs and Imperial Stout for your entire life. And, you'll be
that market is, that's great within that market. If you've got a 500 litre kit and you can just keep doing that, then great.
You're never actually going to pay for that 500 litre kit.
Yeah.
That rating will be 4 points up. So.
Yeah. So that's it. So again, completely agree with that. And I think it's over the long term, it's not a good indicator of. It's definitely not an indicator of how successful a brewery is by any stretch. And so,
I'm interested to know if Belgian brewers care about Untapped now.
Yeah.
Peter, welcome. We were just having a chat about.
Talking to do, Peter.
Hello. Very sorry. It took longer than expected because the Brussels traffic. It's horrible. Very very sorry. But I'm glad I could make it.
Okay, well, it's good to have you. So yeah, I don't know if you caught any of that. They were just discussing Untapped and how important or not it is, or what it forces you to do. Do you pay any attention to it?
Untapped, I don't use it myself, but I know our marketing manager he really looks into it, and it's a good indication of quality or keeping your quality consistent. Or for example, we had like oxidation problem, and when you're in the brewery and you drink your beer, it's fine, but when it leaves the brewery after some months, you don't know what happened. So it's a good indicator, good feedback to know, okay, we have a serious problem, we can take action. So it's helpful, but yeah.
But you're not focusing your thing on. I have to make a new beer just for Untapped.
No.
So tell me, since you came here, so you're in Belgium, and we've just been kind of tasting and trying out everyone else's beers here. So you're around since when? 2018, 2019?
2017 we started brewing.
Okay.
4th of April, yes. So really young.
You're up to date really down there. So yeah, so I mean, just to me, I was looking. I tried two of the beers the other night. So you're really, maybe you can sum it up for us. Like, I mean, you seem to be trying to do very kind of brew within Belgian traditions, but do something a bit different with them. Would that be make them a bit more modern, or?
Yes, we keep like traditional styles, so it's not something really fancy or fashion, but we try to really keep the balance in our beers, especially the hoppy ones. We try to use a lot of hops, but don't make it too bitter, or keep the Belgian balance in our beers.
Yeah, because I mean, just my experience of it is that obviously Belgium has a very strong, proud brewing history between the Abbey beers and the saisons and the lambics and all of that. But it became a bit conservative. Would it be right in saying like it doesn't like change until it's only starting to kind of?
Yeah, I think we're a little bit behind. That's one of the reasons I started also brewing, because 10 years ago there were like only doubles and triples, and try all the same styles. It's changing, but slowly. I think internationally it's going much faster than here in Belgium. But I think now it's interesting to see all the new craft brewers in the scene. It gives some action to the brewing.
Yeah,
it's changing.
Yeah, I found that, and anybody I've had on from Belgium has said the same thing. Like it's been very, very traditional, and obviously for good reason. Like, I mean, it's been good beers, and Liam's starting to brew some Belgians. He said he's getting into more doubles and triples as well, as you're moving away from them.
Yeah,
but I do see the bigger brands in Belgium are starting to experiment a lot more, and they're bringing out variations of their styles where they emphasize different hops or different yeasts, which they never would have bothered with even 5 or 10 years ago. They didn't bother with it, but it's always the same in every country. When independent brewers start to experiment and start to create variation, when the bigger breweries see the success of that, they start to experiment a little bit as well. We're seeing it in this country. The two big breweries now are kind of starting to present themselves with a slightly more crafty image than they would have before. I'm sure that's what's happening in Spain and Belgium too. I saw it about 4 years ago in Portugal. I was there for a beer festival, and the big brands down there were all presenting themselves as crafty images as well.
For sure, here in Spain, yeah. I mean, Mao, San Miguel, I think they now own maybe all of Founders, but they basically bought Founders, which is kind of a shock because, you don't see Mao as like a huge global player, and they just went and bought Founders, but they basically got them to make them a session IPA, and they got them to do, some more craft styles to try and tap into it. And, it's interesting for us because obviously the thing about IPA is it's a completely different for those big businesses, it's a completely different like supply chain model, because they'll be used to having the beer needs to, hit the shelves on this date, and then it can stay there for however many long. So you get some quite old IPAs out there from them, but if it introduces a style to people, it's not always the worst thing, as long as it's okay and they don't just think I don't like IPAs because I've had one and it was horrible.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in Belgium now. There's a few starting to do, very IPA, like Brussels Beer Project and that. But I think that's not the style you're going down yet, is it? Or do you want to go down that? I mean, you have the ones I tried the other night. There was apple and blackcurrant. Is that right?
Yes, gourmandine. Yes.
Yeah, that was very nice. And I tried your
I've got the lavender and orange.
Yeah. But that one, it just it's still in the warm room. It's re-fermented. But I wanted to send you, but I don't know if it's fully re-fermented yet. But it's something new with some malt that is infused with lavender and orange peel. So we're trying. We're trying now to make like we have our standard beers, so more traditional Belgian beers, and then we have our Joker collection where we try to do some experiments and have fun as a brewer to see to try new things.
And are you selling mainly like directly? Are you selling in bars? How are you? Are you selling locally? What?
Local in the local supermarkets. It's 50 kilometers around the brewery and the bars, but now with the situation, it's complicated, of course, for everybody.
I'm just wondering what the kind of like, what the reception is to doing something a little bit different with them, but still keeping that Belgian tradition. Because I know your flagship one, the Thor, was I tried that the other night, and it's a double, isn't it? But it's
a strong Belgian dark ale, but we did a little twist. We used peated malt to have some more character, and also some bourbon chips in it.
Okay, no, the bourbon, but I got the peat in it, and that was, it was recognizably a double, but there was just that little twist, and it was almost too sweet for me. But then the peat would just come in and kind of cut it out,
Yeah.
Did you try it?
Yeah, I tried it last night. I tried a lot of your beers last night, Peter. He was a very he's open-minded enough. He likes a lot of our beers, but he'd be quite he wouldn't know a lot of Belgian style or anything like that, so he wouldn't be too au fait with it. But he liked most of them. He liked everything actually except the apple and blackcurrant, which he didn't.
Yeah, I understand.
That was a bit of a shock to his system, I think.
I like the apple and blackcurrant.
A good few of them. They were all very excellent. For me, the triple actually stood out.
Yeah.
Maybe because in my head, we've just brewed a double called Double Irish, and traditional Belgian styles are what are in my head at the moment. So it was interesting to try the triple.
And so you which one was the triple?
It's but it's also with a twist, because it's not really like a traditional triple. It's also with more caramel malt. It's more amber colored.
Yeah, it was malty. Yeah,
Yeah, and what do you find like I said, in Belgium? Let me think of what I was trying to ask here, because I've suddenly went out of my head.
No problem.
Yeah, so like, I mean, when you're picking on the twist, like, do you get that into the bars? Like, do people come looking for it then, or like, how's your branding? Because your branding is very strong. Is it really built around that twist of having a twist in it?
I think it comes naturally when you brew. You want to make your own style and do your own thing. So even if you brew in a style, you try to color outside of the lines. I think it's in our DNA of our brewery, and it's the whole team. We all think together for new beers, what we're gonna do. Even also the marketing, we think about the names, the images. I think it comes naturally too, because if you're just trying to say, I want to copy another triple, it doesn't work. People will maybe try your beer one time, but if it's not different or if there's no added value, they will not keep drinking your beers.
No, I'm thinking, I don't know, you probably know Jeff from Hopton Dormel.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I know.
But he's always giving out about people just like Belgians are just brewing more triples and just putting an Abbey name on it and claiming it's loads of history.
Yeah, no, we're a really young brewery, so we're not trying to say we're monks or anything. No.
And Patrick, down in Spain, would there be much demand for Belgians, or would that be completely?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's, I mean, we're just down the road from us. There's a Belgian bar, which does well. I think it's the classics over here, the sort of Rocheforts, Lambics as well are popular here for sure. There's a bar in Madrid which kind of specializes in Lambic. Who does? He's kind of very proactive on sourcing kind of rare stuff, and that's popular. It's still niche, but I guess because Spain doesn't have that much sort of beer diversity in its own tradition, traditional styles from other countries like Belgian or whether it's sort of British bitters and this kind of stuff or whatever. There's still a bit of a market for that, and I think that there's always been beer specific bars that were doing those kind of beers. But yeah, in terms of Spanish breweries brewing a lot of that kind of style, it's not it's not that popular because I guess it's easy to just get it from Belgium where they already do it very well. So sort of there's not that much need to do it, I would guess. And we definitely find things like those sort of styles. If we put them on keg, for example, they take a lot longer to shift here. It's just not necessarily in the palette for now.
I kind of think the same is true here, though. Like you can get all the classics here as well. So you can get the Chimay and the Duvel and all that. But like when I was going to brew Spice Bag Saison, one of the things I like to do before I brew a style of beer, if I've never brewed the style before, is to taste as many iterations of that style as I can. If I'm making a Belgian Saison, I want to taste one from Belgium, and I went around several off licenses and I couldn't get a Belgian Saison.
Yeah.
So I suppose the point I'm making is that there's a certain amount of Belgian beer here, but it's kind of mainstream Belgium, which isn't mainstream here, but it's mainstream in Belgium. Yeah. So we don't see very many small Belgian brewers here.
Yeah, so it's craft in Ireland, but it's kind of like the big boys in Belgium.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of like, I suppose, Guinness. Guinness in Ireland is everywhere, but outside of Ireland, it's considered a craft beer in a lot of places.
Yeah. Same with Fuller's. People see Fuller's here and they'll go, "Oh, Fuller's, that's that's a kind of a nice niche one," and you go, "Yeah, but if you live in London, you turn any corner and you find a Fuller's pub." I mean, Peter, I just wondered, what of the styles that you brew, which would be the kind of the flagship or like the core range or the bestseller of what are people or most of these? Most of them.
Good question. The flagship. So we started with the Rio, Valduc Rio, the triple amber triple. But now we can see that the Fée Verte, so the session IPA, is also doing really well. Everything is always seasonal. Like the Tor, it's more in the winter. But we see that the Fée Verte now, the people, even the Belgians that are conservative, are liking session IPAs. They like that it's low in alcohol, I think, and with a lot of hops without being too bitter. So these two are really doing well at the moment.
What's the alcohol?
But it changes. Yeah, alcohol it's 4.7%. For Belgians it's low.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. All Belgian beers are traditionally very, very strong, aren't they? Whereas like we were saying earlier, like in Ireland and the UK, it would be much more a session. You're going into the pub and you're drinking, so you want something that's you're not going to fall over after 3 drinks, you know.
Lads want a pint.
Something, yeah, because I remember the first time I went out in Belgium, I don't know, I think I tried a few Duvels and I was falling off. Didn't expect the effect that it had, you know.
Yeah.
No one hides alcohol like the Belgians. It's crazy. You just like, this is fine, no problem.
Yeah, then you just fall off.
Some of them only show the Plato, so you're like, I can't calculate this right now. I don't know, whatever it is, fine.
But you think it brings up something for me, like, is it harder to, or because we have the 2 sides, I suppose, Spain and Belgium, like, is it harder to convince people to try new beers in, say, Spain, where they don't have the culture, or in Belgium, where it's a very maybe set culture on the beers and what a beer should be?
Well, I'd say for Spain, I think in the right situation, I think they're very open-minded. They've got they don't necessarily have a beer culture. They've got a very strong food and drink culture, obviously, and so they'll be very much open to trying stuff. We find in Madrid that because we're a Madrid brand, sort of regionality is a huge thing here. So for better or worse, sometimes you'll see things in the news, I suppose. But people have a real strong identity of their city, of where they're from. They're from Madrid, but also the region of Madrid. And so if it's a Madrid brand, they'll want to give it a go. And so getting them to try it is not that difficult, especially among the younger generation. But that goes 2 ways, because that means that the current sort of big player in your region will be, people will feel a lot of loyalty to that brand. So getting them to try it is quite easy. Getting them to move is not always that easy, because it's there's a saying here of, the mal de toda la vida, which is like the mal of all your life. This is like, my grandparents have been drinking this since the 1900, and so you're like, well, my great grandparents have been drinking this since 1900, and it's just sort of, this is what we do. We go out and we have a few bottles or a few doubles of Mao, and that's it. So, you do convince people, but it's got to be based on them really liking the beer, and that's, I suppose, as it should be.
What do you think, Peter? Is it? Do you think the fact that people are, have this strong beer culture, have an idea of what beer should be? Because Belgium has, it has quite a wide range of beer cultures, from your Abbeys to your Saisons to the Lambics to the Flemish Reds and that. So, do you think people kind of stick on what they have there as well, or?
Yeah, I think like what's your name again? Sorry, from OSO Brewery.
Patrick.
Yeah. Patrick said that it's really also regional dependent and generation from generation. So, and maybe it's also changing now how people drink. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, it is changing a bit slowly. I have a question here actually from Taris. He's asking me a question again. I'm just wondering, what do you do collaborations? Do you do a lot of collaborations, or
We don't tend to collaborate with other breweries, to be honest. We've done some, but we collaborate with other food producers and other small companies when we can. So there's a local company called Richmond Cordial who harvest elderflowers and make a cordial from it, and we use theirs in a beer. We collaborate with a local whiskey distiller, local chocolate maker, the spices guy I spoke about earlier. We do a lot of collaborations with other small companies, but not necessarily with other breweries.
We do a few. We do a few. I mean, collaborations among, I guess a bit like what Liam's saying, we've done some stuff with, some stouts of people that will be making, their own chocolate or their own flavored chocolate and stuff like that. We do a few with other breweries. I would say there's probably a bit too much of it. I mean, I would love to do, collaboration with a traditional, established maker of Gers, because that would be fascinating. I would love that. But doing an IPA with someone else who's done an IPA, it's just sort of, it's not like, and it's a marketing thing. There's no point sort of bullshitting. Also, there's no point lying about it. It helps to sell some stuff sometimes. But I think it's sort of lost its, for me, it's lost its excitement. I don't see why two breweries that are already very good at doing a certain style, doing it together, is going to make it that much better. So, we'll sometimes do some, it's a great day. It's a lot of fun. Go to a brewery and, hang out with other people and have a lot of fun. It's nice to build those relationships, but I think realistically, being completely honest, in the end product of the beer, it doesn't always make that much difference. But like I said, if you can go, if you have people who are specialists in various things, then I think it can be great. It can be a good outcome.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, especially as you mentioned about IPAs. I mean, if you're just swapping out hops there and doing some different hops that that one person has used and the other hasn't, then doesn't. How about you, Peter? Do you do a lot of collaborations or?
We do collaborations, but with other local, like the farmer on the other side of the road. Not really with brewers. Even with brewers, we collaborate, but it's more in behind the scene. It's not making a beer together. We help each other out with hops, malts, cardboard. In Belgium, the small brewers is really familiar, especially now with some problems with delivery of cardboard boxes, like for example. We help each other out, but we work together for like the apple and blackcurrant with a local farmer, and for our malt, our Pilsner malt is also from the farm just on the other side of the road. So we think more in collaboration, like in durable local stuff. But it would be interesting, like Patrick said, to do a collaboration with a brewer that is an expert in a specific style, like Outbrun or because that would be interesting. But just doing the same beer, it can be fun, of course, to brew together. But I don't know if there's really added value.
Say one brewery is known for one style of beer, the other is known for the other style of beer, and they come up with some way of creating a hybrid style or something, and that's
combining.
It has a proper USP. That's interesting. But as Patrick said, like, let's get together.
Yeah, just to brew the same beer. But yeah, no, more interesting thing sounds like what both Peter and Liam's talking about there, like collaborating with kind of food companies or local producers about something else that you're trying to match in. It actually brings up something I had a question to ask you, Liam, about on all your packaging. You mentioned the food that you think it should be paired with.
Yeah.
So how, like, where did you come up? Is that something that you already had in mind that you think about when you're drinking a beer that you just put down?
I always think about it when I'm drinking beer. I always think about food immediately.
But you don't put out like a pack of potatoes or something like that.
Yeah. It's like we very happily focused, and we always think the beer should be enjoyed at the dinner table as much as wine is. So, like, we have this huge reputation for beer in our country, but like a lot of restaurants don't think about their beer offering at all. It has improved over the last few years, but sometimes you go to a very high-end restaurant and you ask to see the beer list, and they look at you like you're crazy, and they offer you a bottle of Heineken. And for me, like, somebody who looks after beverages in a restaurant, particularly if they're going to charge 30 or 40 for a plate of food, should be looking after the beer list too. and that's part of why we put that on the bottles, because for me, like bringing in wine from another country to serve with food is great, but if you're going to be a proper Irish restaurant serving Irish fare, then you should be serving local beers as well, and you should be talking about them with your food, because we all talk about sourcing the meat from a local farmer and all that, but nobody ever talks about where the beer came from,
Yeah. No, it struck me immediately like that you had it on every one, even on the cans, which was I could have understood the bottles.
Yeah, look, we're not trying to be overly serious with it, but we have a bit of fun with it as well. So there's generally one there that we were thinking about when you land home from the pub full of beer and you're looking around your kitchen for something to eat. There's usually one of our take notes is usually pointed in that direction, but food and beer for me are very important. Sorry, forklift there. No,
Brewers life.
Yeah, I'd say that one, the cheese and ham toasty with nice dollop of mustard, which sounds good actually at the moment. Isn't that I don't know. Actually, I'll just ask about one other beer here that I had. Patrick, your Berliner Weiss. I didn't try it yet, but that seemed out of character of the pastry stouts and the triple IPAs. Do you sell a lot of that, or what made you?
Yeah. This is we do every couple of months. We'll do a blend of ice with fruit, and they sell really. Yeah, they go great. I mean, it's quite a strong cider culture here in Spain. I don't know if you know that.
No, that at all.
This up in the north. It's the one where they sort of pour it, they pour it up here into a glass. Well, you can't see obviously because I'm on Zoom, but they pour it from as far as up high as they can go to as low as they can go, aerated out. That's very popular. So they're not sort of unused to that, acidic, sort of fruity style. And the fruited blend of ices go really well. We normally will stick around. We'll normally do it with berries, some sort of combination we're trying out to try and, a lot of what we're doing is really kind of experimenting, trying to hone things down for our core range. And so, we do a lot of those, and they go, we put a fair bit of fruit in there, so they're kind of got that balance of some sweetness and the acidity. And again, it's also, how it is with craft beer. It's the cliche that we brew what we like to drink, but you do also kind of have to, otherwise you can't be just tasting beer going, I don't know if it's any good because it's not my style. It's you kind of have to brew the stuff that you like to drink, and we're sessionable pale ales and sessional IPAs we like to drink. Fruited blend of ice we like to drink, and the occasional double IPA. Not drinking that as much. Is what we like, and I think it's a lot. You're definitely better at being self-critical and working on recipes when it's the stuff that you like. So,
so maybe look. I've held you now way beyond the time that I promised to hold you, but maybe I could just ask you one question each. Is there, because it just comes on from that, is there a style of beer that you want to brew that you've never brewed? How about you, Peter? You start us.
Okay. I was thinking about Oud Bruin. I don't know if you know BreweryVisits.
Yeah.
They went to visit our brewery recently, and I wanted to blend. They give some courses in blending for Oud Bruin. It's Flemish red, I think, in English. But I had a wedding. I was best man at the wedding, so I couldn't go. But I'm really looking forward to learn how to blend, because I don't have any experience with that yet. So that would be a style I really want to. I look forward to brewing. Yeah.
It's funny. Blending was actually what I was going to say as well. It's something I'm very interested in. We've been playing around a little bit, but when you play around with these things, eventually you realise you haven't got a bloody clue what you're doing. So I need to educate myself as well. The other thing I'd say is that Spice Bag Saison was the first Saison we ever brewed. And Saison is an amazing style for experimenting with various ingredients because it really acts as a platform to let other ingredients shine, is what I think. So I'm going to be doing a lot more playing around with Saisons as well, but blending is something I've had in my head for a while now.
For me, I mean, the blending would love to do it, but not even anywhere near brave enough to consider it right now. I think I would. I mean, there are lots of styles that we don't brew that I would like to brew, but I would like to get us to the point where we could start to do some craft beer here in Spain, because I think that would just, we'd be able to get a lot of people excited. So I think we will do it someday. I love drinking ESBs and best bitters and stuff. I used to drink that a lot when I was in the UK. I really miss it. Whilst I'm a southerner, I am a big sparkler. I like craft beer through a sparkler, and so I would love for us to do those kind of beers. Probably not on the same scale we would do some of the other beers. Stick them into casks and then have a nice handful in our own bars and in our tap room and that kind of stuff. And I just, when it gets cold, that's just the beer I want to drink. So that's what I would like to do.
Okay, well, maybe someday we'll see some exciting changed beer, something that you're trying that you're going to come out of this. The blending is something actually that I'm fascinated with, but I don't know anything about it either. But listen, I've held you now for it's an hour and a half, so I think it's about time to let you go. Thanks a million for taking part. It was a pleasure, and thanks. I'm looking forward to tasting some more of these beers now that I have a bit more knowledge about them.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for all the lovely beers. I'm going to finish them off tonight.
Likewise, lovely to meet you. Great beers. Enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Okay. So I'll just let you know that next week is our last one. We have Varionica from Croatia, El Camino from Spain, and Crooked Spider from the Netherlands coming on. It's the last one before Christmas. So hopefully should be interesting. I'm going to play out a little video with kind of intro to them. And just say thanks again, million, for taking part.
All the best. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.